Good morning, everybody. Thanks for everybody who's here in the room, and thanks for everybody who is online, joining us from afar. You may notice that I am not Diana McEwen. Diana is at a conference in Iowa this week, and so I'm filling in for her place today, and will probably be more involved in the workshops going forward as well. My name is Abby Finnis, and I'm co-director of the GreenStep Cities program, along with Philip Music at the MPCA. I work for the Great Plains Institute with Diana, which is a nonprofit organization in South Minneapolis. We are talking about energy, data, and action today. I know you're all really excited about it. Numbers, yay. And we have really good presentations for you all with a lot of really valuable information to really prompt cities to start tracking how they use energy, set goals, and really look forward to achieving some of those goals and reducing energy consumption in city operations as well as in your communities with businesses and residents too. So I wanted to do kind of a quick introduction, go around the room just so we know who is in the room with us. Some folks might be cities, some folks might be people who can help the cities achieve their goals, and other resources. So it'd be good to just sort of get a sense of who is here. So let's start with Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Hodge. I'm an administrative member being hosted at GPI, and I will be presenting in a little bit about what I'm working doing.
Hi, my name is Maggie Kozak. I'm also filling in for Catherine Phillips, who was here last time and is in Iowa attending a conference, and pleased to be with all of you, and beg your forgiveness in advance for any technical difficulties that may arise.
You're doing a great job.
Sherry Snyder with the White Group. I'll be presenting on P3 benchmarking.
Chris Swanson, City of Maplewood. I will be presenting on taking action.
I'm Tara Brown. I'm with the City of Medina and Sustainability Coordinator, helping take on some ownership through the P3 benchmarking and our other sustainability.
I'm Laura Middleburg with MPCA. I'm a GreenStep advisor, and I'm presenting on DC operations.
I'm Eric Wycheck from the Metropolitan Council.
Connie Taylor, City of White Bear Lake.
I'm Ted Redmond. I'm with Pale Blue Dot. I'm a net zero architect, and I do sustainability consulting, greenhouse gas baseline assessment, and climate action planning.
I'm Hannah Gary. I'm also a Green Corps member being hosted by the City of Golden Valley, helping them inventory their GreenStep cities.
Jonathan Wall, City of Maplewood.
Danielle Cabot, League of Minnesota Cities.
Carmelita Nelson, Department of Natural Resources with the Water Conservation Program, and I've been working with Philip to try and integrate water conservation into the GreenStep.
Good morning. I'm Peter Lindstrom. I'm the local government outreach coordinator for the Clean Energy Resource Teams and the mayor of Belfast.
And I'm Philip Music with the GreenStep Cities program.
Welcome.
And one more, just walked in.
Hi, I'm Tim Pratt with the City of Brooklyn.
Perfect.
Alex Chicken with
there
the Department of Commerce. I manage the local energy efficiency.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for everybody for coming. We're going to get started. We have a full agenda. So Sherry's first talk about V3. It'll be a good introduction for those of you who haven't really gotten your feet wet from V3, and we'll also provide some information on some stuff that's new.
Again, the technical difficulties, I apologize for that. All right, let's get you started.
Oh, and I just want to say thank you to Johnson Controls for sponsoring this event.
Right, now I can.
Yes,
There we
go for it.
So again, I'm Sherry Schneider with the White Group. We manage and host the P3 benchmarking program that GreenStep Cities uses. Today, I'm going to briefly run through. This is normally a 60-minute presentation, so I'm squeezing it down to 30 minutes. So I want to cover briefly the overview of the site, and then also what's new. We recently did custom events, building level metrics, and then enforcing the meter connections to buildings, which may cause a few errors in your portfolio if those weren't connected previously. So we'll cover all that. And then kind of singing it.
So it is, so it is. Can I see that for a second? All right. Having fun, like, technology. Yep. See what you mean. There you go. Next slide. Let's try that.
So just talking briefly about B3, it is part of a program, Buildings, Benchmarks, and Beyond, which we'll talk about the operations piece of it. There's guidelines, the energy, B3, or SB 2030, benchmarking, there we go, operations, and post-occupancy.
Let's see if you can get it to work. I think I just got it to work. Oh.
Okay, there we go.
Great.
So originally back in 2001, legislation was written, and all public buildings in state of Minnesota were required to put in 12 months. A lot of them did their 12 months and stopped doing it. Many of them have continued on. In 2004, we established the original website, which if any of you were using it back then, it was terrible looking compared to what we've got now. But now benchmarking is used across the U.S. by various different state and private organizations. So again, there's a recap of what is part of in Minnesota. Across the U.S., only the benchmarking piece is what we're and making available to the private sector. Basic, for those that haven't logged in, this is the Minnesota page. So we have different home pages for the different entities. This is a screenshot of the home page. So anything across the top in the About, news and reports is all open to the public. Anybody can look at that. Once you sign in the upper right-hand corner, you'll get into the, whoa, that was very quick. You'll get into the launch option that gives you the secure section, so everything that you have been granted permission to either view access or edit access. If you click on your name, you'll have the option to edit some of your personal information, reset your password, etc. So for those that haven't seen it, this is the default homepage once you log in. We're using a support demo organization. And so on the left-hand side here is the architectural tree. We've got the organizations and then your sites. And then now a new feature is down to the building level. So that's something new that just got implemented in the last month. Across the application, you'll see the little help icon, the question mark. So you can click on that anywhere and get additional information. And then at the organization level, we've got a couple different spots here where you can tell how current your data is. And that's important because it's always going to look at this gets confusing, it's the oldest meter reading, the most recent oldest meter reading. So if you've got 5 meters and they're all up to date through yesterday, but you've got a fuel oil meter that you haven't updated since January, it's going to say that your organization isn't current and, up until January because it's missing that additional information. The blue background is the water, so very similar. The icons here will go through in the presentation. There's links throughout at the organization and site level to add buildings. You can hide decommissioned buildings and meters. That may be something that everyone's aware of. It kind of cleans up your portfolio if you've got a lot of old data in there. The column headers you can click on to resort, so then that's helpful if you want to group all of your building types together, do it alphabetical, do it by square footage. Just an easy way to kind of look at the different things. The status column is always helpful. There's red triangles, which are errors. There's yellow triangles, which are warnings. The warnings will still try and calculate metrics. They may not be as accurate, but if you have red errors, that will not be able to calculate whichever metric page you're on. And then there's also some gray triangles, and those are not applicable. So we'll cover some of that in additional slides. The third tab across the top is the advanced meter search. If you've got a portfolio with a lot of meters and you've got someone entering in the data, this is a nice way to just be able to look at all the meters at once. You can either type in an account number, a premise number, even just a utility company if you've got a stack of Excel bills, and you'll just be able to see everything listed and then just click on them and be able to enter in versus having to go into each site and look at the meters. So it's just a quicker way for those with larger portfolios. Site level, so we've always had the site level metrics, the 4 across the top, and then it's got a listing of the buildings and the meters. We've recently added this connections column, so you can see how many buildings each of the meters is connected to. If you see a 0 there, it's a good indication that you need to go in and update what buildings those meters are servicing. There is a chance that you have a meter for a exterior sign or some lighting that truly is not servicing a building. But for the most part, all of the meters should be connected to at least one building. And again, the link to add additional sites. For those that may not be familiar, the metrics across the top are all using different sources. So it may be that your benchmark is showing that you're doing awesome, but your Energy Star score is showing that you're doing terrible. And they're using two different databases. The benchmark is using your index ratio, so it's comparing yourself to what the building would be built to at current code. Energy Star is using the CBEX, which is the national database. You're being compared to the entire U.S. So it sometimes is a case where those metrics don't always jive, and that's usually able to explain by looking at the details. A new level, oops, we're not advancing again.
If you point at this computer, does that help? This laptop? No. Oh, fun with wireless technology.
So a new feature is the building level metrics. So you can see now, there we go, that we now have the building in the left tree. So based on the icons, you can see the folder is your organization. If it's a multi-site or multi-building site, you'll have a little multi-building icon and then the single building for the building level. So that is a new feature. It is important that your meters are connected accurately so that the application knows exactly which meters to report on if you are at the building level. So again, here's just a blow up of that connection. And you can see the chilled water is connected to two buildings. The electric is a dedicated meter, and the steam is shared by all three buildings within that site.
Frustrating, isn't it? Oh, gosh. Go out of this view just to see if maybe that makes it any better. Any idea which slide number you're on? Huh. Is that the one you want?
That's fine, yep.
Sorry, I know that's ugly. Let's see if we can switch it back. Audience, feel free to tell me what to click on.
Also, I think you have to have the PowerPoint up as the main thing.
Yeah.
If she's using that, or else then it thinks you're trying to move forward with the other things.
What would I click instead?
So just stay on slideshow in the PowerPoint program.
Okay. So, like, what do I click on now? Here's slideshow.
And
From current slide.
current slide.
And then just stay on the PowerPoint. And that
Okay.
should allow her to just keep using.
In other words, don't show her.
You can see it on the website.
Yeah.
Thank you, audience.
And don't click any of the other little programs too. I think that's what.
Because that slows it down.
That basically pulls the focus of the clicker to that program.
Thank you.
So that was a brief overview of the website, getting your data in. We've got the site editor. So if you wanted to change your site name or do anything on that, there's an attributes tab, and here's where we'll flag that you're participating in GreenStep cities. And scroll down a little in the screenshot. Then events is the new feature that recently came out. You can set up custom events. So if something happened and a boiler went out and you wanted to flag why there was a dip in potential consumption, you can flag that as a custom event. And then the notes field is just a public area where you can type in any notes that show up on that public report that's available for everyone to see. So some of the custom event examples that we've got here is renovation, operations, maintenance, weather, any of the fuel sources that are applicable to your site, water, and then just a catch-all other bucket. So some examples of what may fall into each of those. Going into adding sites and buildings, so the link, a couple different places to add sites and buildings. This is kind of a dark screenshot, but the default option is to add a building to a new site. You can also add a new non-building site if you wanted to track a field or some exterior lighting. And then you can also add buildings to existing sites, this last option, and then in the drop-down is a list of all available sites. But the default is to add a new building and a new site. Just a little explanation about how the sites work within B3 benchmarking. Most of the time we have a one building, one site. So the building within the site has its own dedicated meters. There are cases with campuses where additional buildings have been built, and instead of running new meters, they just connect to an existing one. So then you've got a multi-building site, and then again the non-building site where you may be tracking field lighting or a signage, anything that doesn't have a building, a park structure.
Sorry, I touched something. You want to try it again?
There you go. So the building editor, once you've created a new building or gone into clicking on a building name, you'll get the building editor. The first tab is the location with just general information about the address and the occupancy date. You can also rearrange now. If you accidentally put a building in the wrong site, you can move it to the appropriate site by clicking the parent site drop-down and being able to move it, so that's something that's new. The space usage tab is where you'll allocate what type of building it is and all the different spaces that are within it. You also want to make sure that you update the default hours of operation and conditioning to more accurately match how the building is operated. Again, the question marks will give you an idea of what we include in the different building types. So in this case, we've got the elementary school. We do not include field houses or pools. So if you happen to have that in your elementary school, you're going to want to add those as additional space types. So just a little definition and clarification about what we include as default and what you may want to add additionally. The third tab is advanced benchmarking. For those that have additional information about their buildings, they can take it one step further and provide some additional attributes. You can update one of these fields if you know just the number of floors in your building. You could update, a couple of them, or you could update all of them. It's completely up to what you know for your building. But it does change your benchmark. So the basic benchmark is yellow. If you go into advanced, you'll see orange benchmarks, so you can easily tell which buildings have additional information entered on them. Here's just a quick summary of what those additional attributes are. Number of floors is an easy one that most people are going to know, so if you want to take it that step further. Obviously, the energy use of a one-story building, 40,000 square feet is going to be different than a two-story 40,000 square foot building. So that is an easy one that most people know if you want to take it. And then some of the specialty space types, pools, kitchens, and refrigerated retail have a couple different attributes that you can tweak. Going across to versions, this has been there a while. Not everyone completely understands how it works. But if you have a building that's either been demolished or sold and you want it out of your portfolio, you can use, you can use the mark as demolished or mark as sold, and what that does is it automatically updates the square foot to 0. So it doesn't matter what your space type allocations are. If your square foot is 0, it's 0. So all you have to do is enter in an effective date of when you either demolished or sold the building, and then you'll also want to disconnect those related meters. If you are adding an addition or doing major renovations where you're changing the allocation, you want to create a new building version. You'll give it a name and an effective date. And then you can see here in the upper right-hand corner, it's switched now that we're at building version 2.0, so you can easily see what you're looking at. You'll want to switch back to the space usage tab and update that information as applicable. And then you can see back at the versions tab, we now have 2 versions. If you need to go back and tweak version number 1, you can activate it. So you can see now I'm back to version 1. So then I could redo some space allocations if by chance I accidentally originally created my building as the new version, the current, and I wanted to go back historically 5 years. I could tweak that to make it look like it did 5 years ago. Whenever you save and close, it's always going to revert to the latest version. So you can never look at your data in 2 different versions. It's always going to go to the latest that you have entered. The other tab is just that completely other information. So you can look at it if you want. I'm going to breeze through stuff really quick here. Adding energy meters. We have 8 different energy meters that you can enter. Basic information about who the utility is and their account number. For electric, we do have the option of turning on the demand columns if you want to track your peak demand and charges. The dollars per unit in consumption are there for an eyeball check so that you can see if you didn't accidentally miskey something. So your units, dollars per unit should stay pretty consistent, and then your bar graph, depending on the energy source, you know, obviously is going to go up in the winter for heating or up in the summer for cooling, depending on what you're looking at. And then adding a new reading. So here's just an example utility bill. We've highlighted what you want to make sure that you enter. On the gas side, this isn't really as big of a deal in Minnesota, but if you buy your energy from one provider and have it delivered from another, we do have the option to track those transport charges so you can put it all into one reading. I haven't heard it as popular in Minnesota. A big thing for all the different energy sources is to make sure that you have the right unit. We just had a campus who their utility bill had KCF. Well, is it thousands or is it millions? It depends on the utility company. So of course they entered KCF and their energy use was through the roof, and they said, what's going on? He said, well, really, you're using MCF, so tweak it, and everything came down and made sense again. So it's especially important with the natural gas just to make sure that you're reporting in the right unit.
No, I didn't touch anything.
Oh, there you go. So here's an example of a utility gas bill. The key thing here is to make sure that you pull the consumption after the therm factors or adjustments. Sub-meters, if you do have a sub-meter, we have the option to create that, and then you just select which meter it's a sub-meter to. You can, if you want, be able to highlight what the end use is. Just note, if you do have a building with a data center and you want an Energy Star score, you have to have a sub-meter on your data center. It's required to get an Energy Star score. So then you can just specify that it serves the data center, and we'll push that through the Energy Star so that you can get that score. A new field is the connections. This used to be back on the general tab. This is where I was talking about that we enforce that meters have to be connected to buildings to be able to get down to that building level metric. So we've got a note here that the building has to. So right now, none of them are connected, so I've got an error. I wouldn't be able to save and close my meter editor with this error message still intact. We do have a flag, though, to be able to specify that the meter isn't connected to a building. So if you have a exterior signage or some lighting and it just doesn't warrant having a whole separate E3 site just for that one meter, and it's truly part of that building, you can have it in there with that site and just like that it's not connected to a building. Again, just like on the building side, we can now, or you guys can now, move your meters around if it accidentally gets put in the wrong site, so you don't have to contact us to do that. Here's just a visual of how that dormitory site, so we talked about the 3 electric meters are all dedicated to each of the dorms. They're connected to one. The chilled water 1 and 2 is connected to dorm 1 and dorm 2, and then the steam is shared by all. So we'll get into that building level metric option. If you do have interval data, we work with MAMIC and ERP, so if you have either of those interval meters set up, we can automatically pull that data into B3 benchmarking. That's just a quick screenshot of that. If you have delivered fuel sources, those can get a little hairy. Not everybody sticks or measures their tank on a regular basis to know how much they've used. So we usually just tell people to put a reading in for when they're typically using the fuel source, and then do a 0 reading when they're not, so that when you're looking at your reports, you can see here that we're not showing any fuel oil use in the middle of the summer, since this is a supplemental heating example. Water, we've got 3 different water type meters. When you're in the potable water, you have a couple different options, so you can specify what it's servicing. If you do see this icon next to your utility company, we've got just a little note to help clarify what their billing units are. So for the city of Minneapolis, they say 1 billing unit. What is it? How much is it? What unit should I put in? Well, we know in talking to them that their billing unit is actually 1 CCF. So we would want to change this unit from KGAL to CCF so that you can just seamlessly enter in that information. Sewer is not always billed on the same amount of consumption as your potable water, so we've got that in there as a separate meter type, and then the stormwater fees are not based on consumption, they're just charges, so that's a separate one. Here's a couple of examples of utility bills, importing consumption. I'm going to breeze through this. If you want more information, we can walk you through it, and then the presentations will be made available so that you can look at those in detail. You can also, if you have your Energy Star already, you can pull that into benchmarking by linking the meters. There's a 7 or 8 step process to do that. In Energy Star, they do have some additional building attributes that you need to flag if you want to get that score. Most of them do have defaults, some of them do not, so then you just need to go in and actually enter in those. I'm going to run through the different metrics. For benchmarking, the actual EUI divided by the benchmark EUI, so the expected use is what gives us our index ratio. An index ratio of 1 is using exactly what we would expect. Anything over 1 is using more, and anything less than 1 is using less. So you're performing better than expected. Here is the benchmark view at the organization level. We've got anything red is kind of questionably high or low, and we always stack rank with the worst performing on top. But you can always, again, click on any of the column headers to report things. Here we drill down to just electric, so you can see the stack ranking changed, switching over to natural gas, and again changes. At the site level, so this is looking at all 3 dorms together. We've got the breakdown here of what we're actually reporting on, the 3 buildings and the 5 meters. Now we're looking at just the building level of 1. So we've got the dedicated electric meter, so that we can go to the building level on the electric side. If we switch that to steam up here in the fuel source, you can see now that we're actually reporting back on all 3 buildings because the steam meter is shared and we have no way of allocating how much of that steam went to just building 1, dorm 1. So we've got a big red warning, note, flag. Pay attention, this isn't reporting on dorm 1 even though it says dorm 1 on the top. So if anyone has feedback on a better way to kind of flag that, we weren't exactly clear of, listing all 3 names, or we got into some crazy, very wordy ways of trying to deflect that this is no longer just dorm 1. Peer comparison is the next tab over. Again, we stack rank, worst performing on top. Some space types don't have enough in their pool of similar types, so there isn't one. And again, this is based off of your index ratio, so it has to be a benchmarkable building to be able to get a peer rating. At the site level, I got the graph of how you're doing, and you can allocate either to look at your space allocations or primary building types, so a couple different ways to look at it. Energy Star, again, in the public sector, most building types are not eligible for a score, hence why the state had us create P3 benchmarking. If you aren't eligible, you can kind of get an explanation of why. So here, fire stations are not eligible for a score. Up here, the high school is eligible for a score. We've got a score of 77. If you see meters listed here, it means they are connected to benchmarking, and we've got some information about that and where it's coming from in Energy Star. Baseline is using the metric of comparing the building, the site, the organization to itself over time. So by default, we're using an organization baseline. You can see these are all the same, and we have quite a few that are not applicable. If we switch that over to the site baseline now, you can see that these are different, and all of them but 1 are eligible. So we're currently square foot normalized, and this is a park building that is not a building, so therefore it has no square footage, so therefore there's no square foot normalized, so therefore it has no metrics. If we were to uncheck that, this one would then have a baseline metric as well. Down at the site level, we've got the pretty graph. You can use the arrows to move forward or backward in time. Okay, weather-based or normalization. This is a confusing factor for some folks. You have the option to have no weather normalization. You can weather normalize your baseline, which is our default, or you can weather normalize the actual. So the difference is, and they're both accurate, it's just how the organization wants to do it. If you weather normalize your baseline, you're adjusting the baseline period. So in this case, we've got calendar year of 2010, and you're adjusting it to account for your current period's weather. The flip of that, normalizing your actual, is you're adjusting the current period to account for the baseline weather. So some organizations say, I want my baseline period to never change. I want this baseline period, it says 304, to always be the same regardless of what I'm looking at, and I'm going to adjust my actual to account for that. Some folks say, hey, my actual is my actual, and I never want that to change, adjust my baseline. So it's completely up to the organization. Just pick one and stick with it so that when you're looking back and forth in reports, that the numbers are all kind of jiving. Because as you can see, they are a little different. And that's based on using that, depending on whose weather you're using, how your curve fit is going to figure out or calculate the algorithm. So it gets into a lot of numbers, as Abby talked about, but they're both accurate. It's just a matter of picking one. Here is the baseline view. Again, we're not just electric, since it's a dedicated meter. Water side, very similar. Picking your baseline period at the organization level, you have the option to default the entire organization and site. But it's, as you saw when we did that, we lost out on, I think, 5 or 6 different sites that didn't have data back as far as the organization. So then you can set specific site ones. You want to make sure that you're picking a baseline period that actually has complete data. You can see the difference here. So we definitely want to pick something that you've got all your meters recording 100%. The reports tab, I'm going to breeze through these because there's a lot of different options. You can do it as the site, the org, building. We have all the different report options. So there's the different chart types, the different meters and units that you can report in, the different durations. You can adjust either up in the drop down or with the arrows as I talked about. The different options, you would never turn on all of them. That makes for a very crazy busy report, but you can see all the different options that you can turn on. And then the different comparisons. The benchmark has the yellow line, the baseline has the dotted line, and then a target, which we'll talk about in a minute, has your target baseline and then your actual target. If you do have interval data, you can change your meter source to interval, and then the options are just a little bit different. Water mode has very many of the same. Tools on the improvement tab, here's where you can specify your targets. We'll go over in a second. If you've done any energy audits or have any documentation you want to upload, people with edit access can do that. There's a list of improvement programs here in the state of Minnesota. If anyone has any ones they'd like to add, let us know. And then for organizations that have potential savings, there's some snapshot reports in time. Going over targets real quick, there's the relative target. So if you say I just want to do a percentage reduction, you can do a relative target. If you've gone through some energy modeling and you have exact consumption for the different months, you can enter in an absolute target. And you'll be prompted to type in the consumption for each month. And then you'll see that on the report tab, the option to export, so anything pretty much you put into benchmarking, you can get back out in one form or another. And this is just a quick example of what the exports look like. You can turn on a pretty map view if you've got a bigger portfolio to see where all the different sites are. Any of the charts, you can see the little circle with the down arrow to get the option to save it as either a PNG or a JPEG. The printing icon, you can print it out to a printer, or if you've got access to PDF drivers, you can make a PDF of it. And again, the help summary file. Here's just some summary examples of the warnings versus the errors. Again, warnings will calculate metrics, they just might not be as accurate, and the warnings or the error messages will impede the ability for the application to calculate. And that's what
all right.
So, does anyone have any way of 4 minutes for questions? I wanted to leave a little time for questions, so I breezed through it. So if anyone wants me to go back and explain anything or has any questions specific to your organizations, yeah.
Is this cloud-based or just on a web page or how is it work?
It's a web server. Yep.
So question about non-building sites. You said you can, you could set up, for example, a lift station that just has electricity serving it. That could be a non-building site.
Yep.
Or it could just be a meter within a site that you track. There are 2 different ways.
Yep, you could do it either way. You could have an additional meter within a building site and then just flag it as a non-building, because you don't want to say that that energy is servicing the building that it's connected with, because otherwise it's going to, skew and make it look like the building's using more than it really is. So it could go either way of either adding it to an existing site or making it its own.
So what are non-building sites? So street lights, a billboard?
Street lights, signage, park buildings, athletic fields, pretty much anything that someone wants to track separate from a building
Okay.
doesn't have. I mean, it's completely up to the organization what you guys want to put in here.
And water's the same. You could do athletic field, a pool,
Yep.
experiment, greenhouse.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a big field that you irrigate, but there's no buildings on it, you can put that in there as a non-building water site. And then in the site editor, you can flag, maybe you have a big irrigation field, but there's no electricity on it. In the site editor, you can flag that there's no energy meters, so that you won't see any errors on the energy side of that saying, hey, you don't have any meters. Because we usually expect at least an electric meter for every building. You gotta have like, so if you don't have, if you have a site with no energy, you wanna flag it so you don't get those errors. Back.
Is there any way to have the peer comparison spit out based on actual EUI rather than index?
We want to normalize it so that, because you don't want to compare, if you're a small building, you're obviously going to have a smaller EUI, or the different building types. So we've got it just on index ratio of how you're doing compared to. We can talk about it with the team of being able to do the option on just EUI.
I can suggest it actually, because the EUI itself sort of already factors out.
Yes, does, yeah. I misspoke on that part, yes. EUI is worth it.
We have a question from online. Someone is wondering, what is the status of automatic data entry from utilities into B3 benchmarking?
So we are still finalizing our Excel Energy. That's the only one we're working with right now. It actually goes through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, so there's limitations. Energy Star Portfolio Manager does not track peak demand. So if you have a demand meter, you would not get that information. And Excel Energy chose not to set pass through energy data. So there's a couple of caveats that have actually kind of turned a few people away. But we're still working through. The city of St. Paul is one of our beta testers. And we're still actually have a meeting with Energy Star, or the Excel Energy folks next week to try and work through some of the remaining issues with getting the city of St. Paul set up. So it is coming, hopefully, yes, this fall. We still need to work out a few bugs to figure out how the process is going to work.
Could you just quickly describe the template spreadsheet upload?
Yep, so that was in the presentation. I blew right past it, but there's a tab for each meter. So once you get all your meters set up, you can create an import template, and then you can copy and paste all of your data if you've got it in Access or another Excel spreadsheet. You can format it into a start date, end date, consumption in dollars, and just copy and paste that in, and then use it. So there is some screenshots on how to get that in.
I have one, so this is free to all public buildings.
This is free to all public buildings in the state of Minnesota, yep.
And are there any private buildings that participate in this program? And so you charge them?
We do. We have a license fee.
Are there any private buildings participating?
Yep. Yep, we've got a lot on the East Coast. We've got a couple other cities, state of Iowa. So the state of Iowa is actually paying for their public buildings to put them in, but we've got some private colleges that have license fees to put their data in. We've got a couple of design firms that have purchased like a 50 building license, so they've chosen to put in some of their buildings to track how they're doing compared to how they designed them. So we've got them kind of all over. There's some in Seattle, there's some Tennessee, a lot on the East Coast.
What are some of the features that make them choose B3 over portfolio?
Being able to get that benchmark, that index ratio versus using the CBEX database and using that national. The baseline, obviously both of them, you can track how you were, how you're doing yourself over time. The benchmark is a big selling point. And having it specific to that location versus the national CBEX. And CBEX is
Two-part question. Sewer systems, wastewater treatment plants, and stormwater. You mentioned storm.
So we have a stormwater meter, so you can track the fees.
Fees. Okay.
And then the sewer, we were told when we were creating the water mode by a state representative that not all utilities track or charge potable water and sewer. Sometimes sewer comes from a different utility. So we separated those, and then also because sewer isn't always charged on the same consumption is potable water. Sometimes they're charged on a smaller, with the assumption that not everything is going down the drain. So we separated those.
So the sewer data is both energy and volume?
No, just volume. Just consumption and the volume.
Just
in the dollars that are being charged. Yep. And then wastewater treatment plants, months ago maybe, we got approval from the state to move forward with creating a benchmark for wastewater treatment plants. So they are moving forward with that development. I'm not sure entirely but we will be able to benchmark. It won't be on the energy side, it'll be more on the process, how much, their processing is more critical of, their energy use than the size of the building or, how much energy. Right. So it'll be a little bit different than how the other buildings work with energy, but there will be a benchmark to see how your wastewater treatment plants are going. And some additional information will be provided for that. Yeah.
The growing trend in water reuse, sometimes from stormwater, sometimes from wastewater treatment plant. How would people enter that data?
It's more that you're just using or lowering your potable. We don't have kind of like on the renewable side of energy, we don't have, if that's something that people think we need to add, we can definitely look at doing something like that. But right now we haven't had actually even a lot of use on the water side. It's kind of slowly getting implemented into cities, and if GreenStep cities requires it, that'll obviously change and a lot more will start using it, but right now we don't have a lot of folks that are using it. But any feedback that we get, we'll obviously take into account and propose to the state for future funding to develop. So, again, on the main site, down at the bottom is our contact, so if you have things you'd like to see or questions, there's our phone number, our email address. Please reach out and we'll help.
The form to get access.
The form to get access, you have the contact form, so if you need someone that needs access, there's a form down there for requesting that. So, and I'll be around if anyone thinks of anything else. Thank you. I had to say yesterday when Sherry sent me her slides, she had 98 slides in the deck, and I thought there was no way she was going to get through that, but she did, and on time. Thank you, that was really good. And I hope that all the cities in here have their B3 benchmarking data up to date and using it, and keeping track of how they're using energy in their buildings. So we're going to kind of continue on with what you can do with B3. There's B3 operations manual that Laura Milgren from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and Katie Hush from, I say it right, Hush from the Great Plains Institute, you guys know better. Our Green Corps member will also be.
Hi, everyone. So, as you saw on Sherry's slide where it showed all the B3 different activities they had, one of them was efficient operations. And so that's the home to find what I'm going to present about. But since it's all customized, you can click on it for a brief description of what's available, but then it just says to contact the B3 people here at Mosen, and then Katie will be contact for the greater metro area. And so you have to actually do that contact and find out how to get the manual customized for your own equipment. So I'm going to show you in general how it works. And so my presentation is adapted from one that Garrett goes around and gives. Highlight it a little differently.
I'm like, okay, I'll try to stop touching things so then you can do it.
Do you have the PowerPoint at the forward?
Oh, no, it's right there. It's just next slide. It's just now the issue of
but just make it the
making
forward
the computer.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. All right. So one of the key things about energy efficient operations is that you're trying to use only the amount of energy that you need for its intended purpose, not any more. And so it's not about, having to suffer, be cold, wear sweaters, whatever. It's only that you're not wasting it on purposes where it doesn't benefit. So this goal is kind of difficult to achieve, though. You would think it'd be easy, but actually, a lot of times when you're wasting energy, you actually aren't noticing people aren't complaining, and it's not like too hot, too cold. And so you might not be getting complaints, you might not have discomfort, and you don't necessarily catch it when you're doing routine preventive maintenance, because that's not designed to catch energy. And so also sometimes, energy managers are supposed to be on top of making sure that things are running efficiently, but often if you don't have a dedicated person, you don't have accountability to try and catch things. And the methodology isn't even very clear about how to go about doing it. Yeah. So, and ultimately, I can get it. So, and it's not practical to check everything. So you need some dedicated.
Sorry, you're not on the list.
Oh,
No, she had. I took her off
okay.
because then I was hoping it wouldn't mess up the slides, but by doing that, then I messed up.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, okay. So, but there is a solution for it. That's, and it can be easy and inexpensive to detect the energy if you are, first of all, trying to actually track the things that are wasting the most energy, and so really can make a difference or worth the time invested in it. Use data that's available for it, and set it up so that it requires minimal skill, because if you have to bring in a performance contractor every time it's recommissioning, there's no way you're going to be able to stay on top of it. So the idea was to find out what is spending the most money and wasting the most energy. Data from the Center for Energy and the Environment has shown from recommissioning studies that there are a couple things that really use far more energy, waste far more energy than other things. One is schedules of operation. Could be lighting, could be air handling units. Another is how mixed air temperature works and whether you're heating and cooling in odds with each other so that you're using more energy to do that than you need to. And those are basically so far and above anything else that that's where, if we can focus some tool to be able to do this and make it easy to use, can save a tremendous amount of wasted energy. And so an example of how that might be happening is to look at scheduling. Here you can see the original schedule had it starting at 5:30 in the morning, 5 days a week, and 3 days a week going till 10:30 almost, and then a full day of Saturday operations. Well, what they did is explore why were they starting at 5:30, and they found out, well, it was Monday. Yep, see, they had somebody.
Sorry about that.
Watch out, this is bad. So they came in on a Monday morning, and it was too hot. And people were so upset it wasn't a good conditioned air temperature. Well, it had been a really hot weekend. And so they said, well, we clearly got to start up our systems much earlier to compensate for this. And so they set it Monday through Friday, starting early. Well, when they actually looked at what they needed to do, it turned out, they kind of tested it, that, well, on Mondays you do need to start earlier. You have the whole weekend that you've heated up. But any other day of the week you don't. And so they discovered that they could save a bunch of energy at the beginning of every day. And then that their cleaning crew had gone down from 3 days to 2 days, and also it was totally possible to shut off the air conditioning or the air handling in between when the crew started and when people left the office without it being uncomfortable for anything. And so they were able to save 19% and over 19,000 kilowatts a year. So it's very significant savings. So the solution to find out these kinds of things is to create a really easy protocol to be able to use to make these kind of decisions and findings. And so that's where the B3 operations manual came from. It was called a manual originally. It was kind of the old style, how do you do this? But actually it's an online tool. So someday it'll get a new name. But right now we still call it the manual. And it's basically all these screenshots that get set up for the equipment that you have in your building that kind of run you through this process of setting up timers for lighting and for air handling units, setting up the schedules for it, and then making sure that the timers, whatever's controlling it, are operating properly. And then also doing a mixed air protocol. And so when you go on the B3 website and you click energy efficient operations, the homepage that you come to, and I'll just give you a few examples of what's available by doing this. So there are 4 tabs. The first one is about negotiating the shortest possible schedule, which is basically the example that I just showed you. And it has all the information on the page, which you can't see, so now I will go through it. So the 3 tabs are like the 3 greatest vulnerabilities I talked about. So scheduling of lighting, scheduling of air handling, and exterior temperature. So we'll look at the one that's scheduling of air handling. First of all, you get familiar with the area that you're servicing, which you enter mapped, so it lets you enter your assets into it, and then it has you looking at the existing schedules and a place to be able to change those schedules. And then it had on the page of that tab, it had these questions that I wanted to be able to show you, the key questions that you need to negotiate, which is also the example that I gave you. So how long after shutdowns do conditions go out of range? What allowed them to shut it down for that hour before the cleaning crew came, because it was going to stay with the range. So it's things like that, and that's all on that page. And then where you can actually go in and enter a new operating schedule that you want to change it to. And then the next tab is to actually verify that the schedule is in the timer. And so it gives you the steps to do that, where you log into the timer control, compare the schedule in there to the current schedule, and you change it if they don't match. So you're basically just making sure that not only do you have the schedule manual, online manual, but that schedule is then in the timer. And it has all these, frames that you'll go to based on your equipment, and it has directions on what to do. And then the third step, part of this would be to verify that the timer operations are actually working. So the timer is functioning. And you're verifying the process, making sure when the air handling unit is supposed to be off, and then going and checking that it actually is off at a time when it's supposed to be off, so that you know that your timer is functioning properly. And so you can look both at the data that you get to see this is showing the malfunction, that you're actually using some energy at night when it's supposed to be off, and so that it tells you how to actually confirm that it's off, where you would go and stand next to the equipment, actually feel it, listen to it, make sure it's really simple things, things that you might not think about or know exactly what you're supposed to do. All this is in the manual, all these directions telling you to do these things, so that you can actually find out if it's working. And then you check the supply fans and charge pressure, it tells you how to do it. So basically, it has these 8 system checks in it that are supported. It's still developing more. It sends you automated email alerts to help you know when you're supposed to be doing things, reports to the facility manager, so it has a task tab that gives all the things that are supposed to be done and who's responsible for it, as well as these email alerts. So it can be a great tool for your organization. And so Katie now will talk about how she's connected to this process. If you're in Greater Minnesota, contact Gary Osman. He's at the Center for Sustainable Building Research, which is funded as part of the B3 program. If you have trouble getting hold of Garrett, contact me. And I'm on the best practice advisors pages for energy. You're not going to use it.
No, I don't have it.
Yeah.
So, hi, as Lauren just said, I'm Katie. I'm a new Minnesota GreenStep being hosted on GPI. So if any of you, a little louder? Yeah, I can. So if any of you are familiar with Maddie Norgard, I'm kind of continuing on the same sort of work that she was doing, including the energy efficient operations. So that's, I think, maybe one of my top 3 focuses on GPI, including GreenStep. I am a researcher in local government, and I made a little half-sheet handout just kind of describing what I can do for all of you, and the half-sheet is on the back of the handout. I can also email it to the webinar people too if it's helpful. So I've already worked with the city of St. Louis Park. I was doing it yesterday, just kind of helping them to update their B3 benchmarking, and I think eventually it's going to actually move into using the energy efficient operations manual. And yeah, so this is kind of like a self-plug of like, yeah, you guys should come and contact me, because I'd be so excited to work with all of you. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thanks, Katie.
So thank you guys.
Yeah. So Katie's our roving member through Great Places to support cities that, undertake things in the So yes, we're hoping that you all make great use of her. So, the only requirement is that you try and save some energy and report it to us so that we can report it to AmeriCorps so that we can keep getting numbers. Yeah. Anyway, questions? Yeah.
Lauren, when is this roll out?
So they've been working on it for a while. It's in a pilot phase where they've been trying to get people using it. And I think we are becoming their emissaries to really pilot it because it hasn't been moving very quickly. They're really busy with many different projects. So the more that we request help from them, the more time they will dedicate to doing this. And so that's our goal.
Who's they again?
So Garrett knows them, and it's the Center for Sustainable Building Research. There's this whole consortium that does B3. They all get funding for different pieces of it. CSBR does the Sustainable Building Guidelines and Operations Manual, and they're actually kind of doing it, one person from CSBR and one person from an energy services consultant. And so anyway, the webinar will have the address and phone number. You can search on Garrett at Center for Sustainable Building Research or contact me and I'll get through. Sometimes we can be hard.
Could you have the webpage for the operation manual?
Yeah, b3mn.org.
It's actually a featured link on the homepage. So.
Yeah, right. So it's there where all the things are listed on there, and then you click on it, and then we'll go to the operations manual homepage.
So at this point, a city can just start putting in information and populating, using, or creating their own manual for their own building.
Yeah, well, you have to. So you have to get access, and then I think they have to work through with you what kind of things you actually have and how to set that up within the manual. Once it's set up, then it will be self-operating, and sending out
messages, and it's there online.
Yeah, so you can just go ahead and set up. So Katie is learning how to do that, to be able to set up with Garrett's help, and then Garrett can do it where it's outside of the area that Katie's work.
You want to do internet?
Well, I was going to mention that Garrett and Manny have looked at the pilot and determined that
got your information for this one? Okay, go ahead and log back into that.
Something with the business, so hopefully they learn something from that.
Yeah. I remember them mentioning it. I don't remember exactly what the problem was. I don't know if it was with the kind of controls that you had.
It was the type of controls that we had.
Yeah.
Basically, they're just too old school to do much, I think. So, yeah.
Huh, interesting. So, but the basic, even if you can't program it into the online tool, the basic questions to ask and that whole scheduling process, like we do a whole role play with that scheduling process about bringing in the person who works in security and the cleaning person, facilities manager and the supervisor, the work crew that comes in the earliest. And so all that process manually, excellent, kind of won't take on, especially if you have an intern or a member or anything. Help work with staff to figure out predictive reasons. So the manual is just an easier way to get reminders and to be able to connect it to your control system. But if you have a control system that's not sophisticated enough to connect to it, then it's something that you'll be inputting anyway manually, and so it's a great, kind of process to follow.
Sorry, Sean, just a quick question. Did it take just a couple hour meeting to decide that it wouldn't be helpful for you, or was that how much is that?
Half hour.
Yep.
Half hour.
Yeah, and Chris is going to talk about their program more, so good segue. So, thanks so much.
Well, Maggie's getting this back up and running. I just had a quick comment on you know, we talk about renewable energy a lot and where that's headed, and I was just at a practice this morning where they talked about Dubai and Chile have gotten solar deals where they're purchasing power for under 3 cents a kilowatt hour, which is incredible, and it's clean power, but the cheapest way to do it is to not use it. And so it's kind of amazing that you can just change your schedule a little bit and save 20% of your energy without really paying anything, and you're getting that money back. So conservation and energy efficiency are really important, and we have Maplewood talking about what they are doing in their city along those lines. So Sean Finwell of Maplewood is going to start us off.
So Sean, if it's okay with you, I would like to try controlling your slides here, where we do it the old-fashioned way of next slide, so we don't have the mic, just to test it out and see if that goes smoother.
Don't let me be in full control, but this is good.
And if not, then then we go back to the clicker. But so far, I think this is good. Is that okay with you?
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Thanks for your patience, everyone on the phone and in the room. Sorry.
No problem.
No, this is imperfect.
Looks like a difficult task there. A lot of multitasking. Chris Swanson and I are here today from the city of Maplewood, and we're going to talk about some things that we're doing in our city. I'm going to start by going into some details on what we're doing with our businesses and residents and how we're using some of that energy data to do some planning. And then Chris is going to kind of narrow it down into what we're doing for our city facilities. So first, I always kind of like to start with where is Maplewood? It's that funny-shaped city on the east side of St. Paul. We have a population of 39,742 residents. And in Maplewood, does have that funny shape. Again, we call it kind of an upside-down hockey stick. That lower end is about 1 mile wide and 7 miles long. So it does prove to have some challenges, as you can imagine, for our public works crews, and sometimes, we don't all feel like a community. So it's real important in Maplewood that we do a lot of this community outreach. And we're mostly residential, as a first-rate suburb. We do have quite a bit of commercial, and the next slide will show you, in case you don't know. So the Maplewood Mall, you'll see that, and that, of course, is in Maplewood. And then 3M, their main campus is down in that southern end. So we are really fortunate to have that little piece of southern end because, of course, 3M, as you can imagine, is one of our biggest corporations in Maplewood. So that is Maplewood, and we'll move on here. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project that we've been working on for 2 years now. It's called Partners in Energy, and this is offered by Xcel Energy to local governments. And the city of Maplewood was one of the first cities in the state to participate, but since that time, you can see that other cities have signed on. So we'll move on here. The Xcel Energy program, what they do is they will come to your community, and they really want to help you create your own community energy planning. So they will help facilitate that. And in November of 2014, our City Council did adopt this Memorandum of Understanding to participate in this program, which is a 2-year program. So we created this Energy Action Team, and the team was made up of representatives and stakeholders from the City of Maplewood. We had a representative from Maplewood Mall, someone from 3M, which was really an achievement, I think, because when you think of 3M, they're so worldwide. They're thinking big picture, and then for them to come to the community level was really an accomplishment for us. So we had City Council, environmental commissioners, staff, our Energy Action Team. So we held some meetings to create this Energy Action Plan, and the plan is really meant to be actionable within a 2-year period. So, you have to kind of be realistic with your goals. So in April 27th, 2015, we did adopt the Energized Maplewood Energy Plan, and now right now we are in the implementation phase. So we'll move on. And here's our Energy Action Team. This was kind of a fun event. It was held at 3M's Innovation Center. It was kind of a celebration after we adopted our Energy Action Plan. Moving on. So the first thing we did and how we use that energy data, and this is something that was really beneficial in the program with Xcel Energy. They supplied our city with energy data that we otherwise would not have seen. So because of privacy laws, they could only supply us with this 15 by 15 rule, they call it. So it has to be at least 15 premises, and one of those customers cannot create more than 15% of the energy use. So some of the energy data that we did receive, it wasn't 100% accurate, like we didn't get 3M's energy data, things like that, because of the privacy rules. But we really got a good idea of what's going on in our city. So moving on, we'll see some of the energy data that we did receive. So this is the electricity used in premise count by sector. So this shows that, we do have the 63% commercial and industrial total use, and residential is 37%. But the premises, you can see, is quite the opposite. So there's, of course, less commercial than residential. And moving on, this is natural gas, kind of the opposite. The total use, you can see that the commercial end uses more than natural gas, even though there's less commercial premises. And I thought this was interesting, kind of having this visual of our city and showing those bright areas that really pop out, and it shows there's high energy use going on there. What's happening? So we took a look at that, and you can see 3M's in the center there, so their energy data is not in there. But what's going on in South Maplewood? We have, that's where some of our newer homes are. For Maplewood, new means 20 years, 15. But they're big homes, giant garages. Maybe they're all heating their garages or something. And then, so this is the residential. And then up in the northern portion, we have a lot of older homes. So we'll move on to the natural gas. Again, this is residential, kind of the same story. And moving on, we have the commercial and industrial. And here you can see the area where the Maplewood Mall is. We have a lot of high energy use and some real potential along our Wright Street corridor, where we have a lot of business and manufacturing. And then finally, the natural gas tells a similar story. So we use that data to create our vision, and this took a long time. Given us work like 13 people to create a vision, well, educate and empower the community to participate in energy actions that will move Maplewood towards carbon neutrality. It's got a great ring, and someday, hopefully, that'll be true. But right now, we're just taking some steps to get our residents and businesses involved in some energy actions. So moving forward, those 5 meetings that we had, we can only create these broad-based goals. And so since then, it's really been up to Maplewood staff, Excel Energy, and the facilitator, Center for Energy and Environment, who have kept us on track this whole time to kind of create more refined programs in that regard. So we wanted to do energy education and public events to motivate residential energy awareness and reduce consumption. So that was the residential piece. And then direct outreach and energy coaching for high-profile businesses and institutions. So here's what we've created since that time. Energize Maplewood is a 6-month residential energy challenge. We completed that. I'll go into that a little bit. Energize your congregation. So we're doing some outreach to our congregations. That's going on right now. It's a 3-month energy challenge for the parishioners in the congregation. And then Energize your business. We have kind of 2 focuses there. One is called the Building Tune-Up Program, where we're working with businesses to do energy audits and energy efficiency improvements. And then Benchmark your business. I just named that yesterday, Chris. It should be fun. Where we want to do some outreach to our auto dealers and restaurants. And so moving on here, you will see our energy challenge. We started this January of this year, and we rolled it out, and we recruited these households, and we had like 12 teams, and each team had from 5 to 20 households on it. And moving on, you'll see we had 28 households that participated. So I thought it was a real success, and it was really fun to do. In this challenge, what we were doing is they had to take energy actions, real simple actions, like having a home energy squad visit, an energy audit, signing up for wind source, participating in community solar, or installing your own solar, doing insulation, things like that. And then we held a lot of events where you could get additional points. We had landscaping for energy. We had the rollout was this launch party where Toby, that giant firefly, showed up and was dancing around, and
it was just a lot of fun. You can see here we did some social media, so you got extra points for showing some of the energy actions that you were taking on social media. This is our mayor, Mayor Slawick, who was tweeting about our launch party there. And then we also had, you know, mini challenges. So we would offer free home energy squad visits and energy audits, and then give them like a $50 gift card, and they could hold their own energy party, which is what you're seeing here. But the thing about this program that really, you know, goes into the energy benchmarking was that Excel was, you had to supply your premise number if you were participating, and Excel Energy then was tracking all of our energy use. And, you know, the best way to get points, of course, was through reducing your energy use. So Excel Energy tracked that use that whole 6 months. So we'll move on from there. Now we're going to go into the congregations. We just rolled this out. It's a 3-month challenge. We'll move on. We found, you know, Excel Energy gave us some excellent data too on the number of businesses and things like that. When we said, okay, we want to do some outreach to churches, and they came back the next meeting and they told us how many churches we had in our, you know, so they gave us a lot of valuable information. We have 32 congregations. Let's go back one. So what we thought here is we'll partner with Neighborhood Energy Connection. You know, they're a nonprofit, and they do a lot of work for Excel Energy, promoting their programs. So they do the home energy squad visits, energy audits, and they had just hired this outreach coordinator, so it was perfect timing. So we worked with him, and right now we are recruiting. We think we have about 7 churches that will be participating, and you just have to have a champion and to kind of track. It's a more symbolized challenge. So it's just like 5 energy actions, and then also you get extra points for having Neighborhood Energy Connection and the City of Maplewood come in and give a presentation. And then really what we're trying to do is open the door for making those connections with these churches, because we know, of course, their building envelope has a lot of opportunity to save energy as well. So this is going to be exciting. We're going to, the grand prize is this big party, you know, we're going to party, and totally the giant firefly will show up. And, one of our restaurants, 5A Tavern and Grill, are going to host it. So this will be a fun one to see how this rolls out. So we'll move on. But this one, more along the benchmarking piece, this building tune-up program, we call it. The City of Maplewood did receive a grant from the from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the grant really was, the initial purpose was to kind of educate and outreach on our green building code. The City of Maplewood was the first city in the United States, apparently, to adopt the International Green Construction Code. So all of our public buildings are required to be constructed under this code, which, you know, has higher energy requirements than state code. And it also looks at the overall site. So it's the first code, I think, that does that. So it will give, you know, extra points for increasing your stormwater management, saving natural features, you know, recycling all, like if you're doing a reconstruction, you know, recycling all the products. So the Maplewood Fire Department, our South Fire Station, which is built on the 3M campus, they donated the land for the city to build that. That was the first public building that was constructed under this code, and Chris is going to go into a little bit of detail about what's going on with that and how we've really seen some energy savings there with this code. And then the first private building, you know, they didn't have to construct under this code, but they decided to. And this is in our Gladstone redevelopment area, it's across English Village. So through this grant, then we had Partners in Energy, and we decided to leverage the two and put this as one of our energy actions so that we could help, you know, could tap into Excel Energy and Center for Energy and Environment to help us facilitate this. And we're doing energy audits and energy efficiency improvements, and then we'll do energy tracking. So we'll move on. And you can see, to start, we had this, what we called Energize Your Business event. It was like a free breakfast, and we invited all the businesses, and we had a pretty good turnout. You know, there was about 25 businesses there. And then with that, we were able to recruit 7 businesses to participate. I mean, we're giving them a free energy audit. We are giving them free energy efficiency improvements up to $2,500. And then all we're asking in return is that we can track your energy over 3 years, and then we'll do case studies on them, to promote the business. So, right now, all of our businesses have had the energy audits, and we're just starting to track their energy. Initially, we were going to use the B3 program, but because of the licensing requirements, we thought, let's save a little money and do the portfolio manager. So Ted Redmond, who is here, he's an architect, but he's also a resident of Maplewood. He's been assisting us in this project. We're getting them all put into the portfolio manager. And then, in addition to that, we recently found out about the Energy Star Challenge and how some of these businesses are eligible for certification to become Energy Star certified. And so through the Energy Star Challenge, we think we can work with them to get them certified, at no cost, because that's what the grant is covering. So, once you reach out there, and there's just so many partnerships you can make, it's really kind of an eye-opener. So we'll move on to our next energy action, which we have yet to undertake. But like I said, I just named this. It's called Benchmarks for Business, and we really wanted to do outreach to restaurants and auto dealers, because when we were in that planning process, we took a look at all of our businesses, and all up and down one of our main freeways is auto dealer, auto dealer, auto dealer. And, you go there at night, and it's just bright lights, bright lights. You're like, wow, there's a lot of potential to save energy there. And then Jill Skokheim, who is the co-owner of 5-8 Tavern and Grill, she was part of our energy action team, and she convinced us that there's so much that restaurants can do to save energy, and there's a lot of potential there. So we're moving on here. We do have 47 restaurants and 27 auto dealerships. So we're getting down to the wire here on our planning process. So we needed to, again, find a partner. So Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, if you're not aware, they do free Energy Smart assessments to businesses, and they are also doing free implementation of Portfolio Manager. So they'll get a business set up on the Portfolio Manager and kind of train them on that. And then, we really wanted to promote the Energy Star Challenge, which we will do. But unfortunately, the Energy Star Challenge is not an opportunity for restaurants and auto dealers because there's no comparables apparently. So this is something that we're just starting, and again, hoping to get businesses more aware and start tracking their own data. So we'll move on there. So the goal in the beginning of the planning process, we said we're going to get at least 4 buildings with the building tune-up program, so we have 7. And Excel, they gave us this data. It saved a total of 208 kilowatt hours and 12,000 therms of natural gas. We wanted to get 500 new energy actions taken by residents, and we don't have all the data there, but we know through our energy challenge, our energy challenges, we're ready to exceed that probably. So that's a savings of $130 per year per resident. So the businesses, if we were able to implement everything, will save 400,000 kilowatt hours for local businesses and institutions, saving an average of $1,750. So when the council saw that as a goal, they're like, this is a no-brainer, we got to sign on to this. And then hitting the goals will reduce Maplewood's annual carbon footprint by 1.8 million pounds, which is equivalent to the carbon emitted from 170 passenger vehicles per year. And I think this wraps it up. There's just some resources here. Xcel Energy is continuing to take on cities, a few every year. It's been a great program for us. It's allowed us to create our own energy actions and get assistance from our utility company to implement them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to talk about some things that we're doing in our city facilities. Thanks.
A quick question. Is Maplewood a GreenStep city?
Oh, yes. We have been since 2010. We are Step 4 award.
Went up 5 in Minnesota, so yes.
All right, my name is Chris Swanson. I'm going to be talking more about the, kind of city user of the V3 program.
All right, Chris.
No problem.
Looks familiar. All righty.
feel free to jump in. This is kind of more of a conversational presentation, I think, than anything. So you're taking action, again, really kind of focusing on, as a city user, how we really use this information in this program. So, measuring energy at city facilities. Again, I think this was already kind of touched on in some of the previous ones. It's a requirement, or was a requirement back in 2004 that city buildings all sort of control and monitor their energy. We've been tracking energy at city buildings since 2007. I think we started with 3. We're up to 11 now. We have 3 decommissioned fire stations though, so it's good to see that I can now get those completely off our register. It's kind of interesting to watch them sit there for a while. So we have 3 fire stations that are currently working: City Hall, we have Public Works Building, Community Center, which has its own sort of interesting side of things because there's a pool, there's a recreation room, there's a gymnasium, we have a nature center, and we have a park maintenance garage. We have a ton of other stuff too, as other cities would be. So we have street lights, other utility things, lift stations. We don't have that information entered in just because it's such a kind of, let's say, minuscule amount, and at a certain point, there's really not much you can do for improving besides LEDs and such. So this is what we have and we're tracking. Next slide. So the goal of energy use data, I guess, for the cities from our side point is better manage costs for city facilities. As you'll see later on, as you've seen from these previous presentations, it'll tell you when there's savings, and I can tell you we have a lot of buildings, or at least 2, that are energy hogs, to put it lightly. This also increased the livability of spaces. Nobody wants to come in and have the building 95 degrees. Nobody wants to come in and have it 12 degrees. It's something that it's good for us to be aware of. Also helps us track those systems to make sure that nothing starts really kind of getting haywire. Also talk a little bit about that in one of these later slides, how you can actually see that represented in B3 as you monitor it. And then also increase the lifespan of buildings. If you're monitoring buildings and if you're doing sort of the required maintenance and keeping the systems running as they should, that drastically increases the lifespan of the buildings and usability of buildings. And finally, it's just a good way to show the energy use for amongst other buildings. It's good to monitor that. It's something that you should be doing just as a general maintenance thing. So, next slide. Who has this data? This is always one of those interesting questions that I sort of hear every single time we start having those B3 conversations. So, in this case, it's me. You see me in my office. I was actually entering B3 data at that time. And a lot of times the facility managers do it. I know I've talked to a couple people here already. They may be monitoring a couple buildings. There tends to be a lot of sort of who's doing what. From the personal side of things, and after having a couple years experience with this, I think it'd be really good if you don't have a designated facilities person to have one person assigned. As I said, I'm the guy that monitors this. I'm also the guy that you can start seeing, you watch the trends, you know what's going on. So it's really good to have that one person. I know other folks use their finance people, so whenever a bill comes in, you take it. When you're paying the bill, you just put it right in the system. I've heard that's a very efficient way to go. Our old facilities manager would actually do it every 6 months, which in looking at sort of full monitoring a building, that isn't always the best way because you can have something going like substantially wrong for about 6 months before you finally realize, oh, this isn't working. I'm also excited to hear that I think there's a way that we can actually have information automatically entered in to the B3. I have to be working a little bit more with Sherry on that. So I guess do the next one. So here's one of those fun, interesting case studies. So we had a building facilities manager for many years. He was always on top of it. He tried to input stuff at least every 6 months, so fairly good keeping it up. This is kind of our base level when he was here. He left, and after you can sort of see how it got a little bit more haywire. You can really kind of see a direct result. I think there's a lot more sort of responsive actions from the building users. So somebody walks in, it's too cold, turns the heat, and just kind of leave it. It's quite interesting. So the red line is actually, so this is 15 kilobytes or kVc per square foot. So these are the same spot. You can see there's a substantial increase without a facilities manager there. So I think that's something that it really goes to prove it's good to have this information and tracking, just because I don't think anyone really took into account that that was happening at these facilities. Because again, if it feels nice, you don't really think about it. So even if it's a little bit warmer than it normally would be, oh, it's fine, it's good, I can take off my sweater. But we're using a significant more amount of energy during those months. Next one. Here's another interesting thing to take into tracking. Again, we've been monitoring this for many, many years. It tends to be kind of a you enter the information, you look at it a little bit, make sure nothing's too crazy, and you sort of don't think about it till the next time you enter stuff. But we increased the square footage of our city hall about 2 or 3 years ago. And looking at it, it was before I was entering all the information and doing any of that monitoring. But then I started doing that. I was like, what's going on? Why are we getting these drastically increased numbers, about 20 to 30% more energy use for this building? And after trying to figure out why, it dawned on me, this is where we built the increased building. So you can sort of see continual monitoring and making sure you update those items is something very key. It's kind of interesting. It's an increase in, you can see increase in energy. The square footage has gone up a little bit just because of the use is more intense. So it's now a bunch more police offices, so they tend to have the lights on a little bit more than a normal office would. So just going back and looking at the information saying, well, is this still how we're actually using this? So is it a garage? Recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually went up to our public works building. So they made all these old storage areas into offices. So again, you see an increase in energy use with that change of use. So sort of going back, switching, and making sure that you actually get that representative square footage use there, or square footage type. You got the next one? In May through July of 2015, we did a plug load study at our public works building. So we worked with Seventh Wave. And they basically came in and said, we want to work with you guys to sort of look at how we can influence energy use, so plug loads directly in an office. So basically what they did through a couple months, first off, we sent out some educational information to some of the employees saying, we want you to start turning off your computer workstations completely. We provided people with either the power strips that you could basically turn off with a button, and then we actually had some remote buttons where you could turn off sort of large areas, so printers, coffee makers, all those things. And then for a second part of that, we actually distributed some red or some blue lights that went right on top of some people's computers or on their desks that would show that you're still using energy. So we had those directly plugged into those power strips, so that when you were leaving, when you turned off all the lights, hopefully, you could still see that your electronic equipment were still pulling energy. So turn those off, everything's on. So we hope we get information on that in the next couple months to sort of see what the influence was. I couldn't see that reflected directly in the B3 information, just because I think Laura had that in one of her previous slides. They're saying it's a very small amount from those actual just electronic equipment, but it's something we hope to see sort of a reduction. Next slide. So now the International Green Construction Code. So I think Sean touched on a little bit. We adopted the International Green Construction Code as our new construction standard. That's for all city-funded buildings, which is key because there's some things with getting TIF money, then they now have to meet that, or sort of what we've interpreted as they have to meet that. Also, when that was going through and we were adopting that, they also were proposing the construction of a new fire station in South Maplewood. And part of that negotiation was the fact that then they had to build to that green construction standard. Also with that is we have to have all of our city buildings meet that standard by 2030, I think. So that we'll see improvements there through the next couple of years. So this is also, just a quick thing on that building. It's around the clock staff, so there's always firemen there, always, also there's a police substation, so there's cops there many times. So it's really good. It's a high energy use. As you know, it's sort of large space, big areas, lots of spots to heat. So to build that standard, I think was really good from us.
Sorry, quick question.
Yeah.
You said it's fluid. Did you adopt the whole code, or did you do a modification?
So modification. If people are aware of the International Green Construction Code, there's basically the basics that you have to adopt from it, and then there's various levels that you can adopt. Nick Carver, who was our building official, who retired about 3 days ago, went through and really picked stuff that he thought was suitable for the area that we live in. So some of the items were not adopted, but as a whole, it's a good point.
Chris, my understanding is the reason why you can go above and beyond the state code is because there's a nexus to city money.
Yes. So that's basically, yeah. So basically, sort of the state statute, you can't require somebody to build above the state building code unless there's city funding involved. So that was our interpretation of that. So that's how we were able to get this to happen. Sean touched on that we actually just had a recent development that also built to this standard. That was one of the ones we're in conversations with them. We're like, we would love if you built that. And they said, sure, we can do that there. You're building to, I think, a federal standard for housing assistance, or to have kind of close to that. So they decided that, yes, it's good for them. We'll build that too. So, next slide. So this is the implementation. It's really kind of, I'll show later on in this presentation where the information we're getting and where it's supposed to be. There's been significant savings in energy at this site. That's actually D3's words, so it's good when you get those. So here's some of the averages of kBTU square foot. So City Hall, 160 kBTUs. I can say that's one of our worst buildings. It's like 80s building. There hasn't been too much done there. Fire Station 2, kind of much the same use. Quite a newer building, 89.19 kBTUs. So doing better, still not the best. Our community center, that's the energy hog in this situation. 174.4 kBTUs a square foot. Next slide, please.
So Chris, we're a little bit behind, if you could.
Okay. Yeah. So what we're seeing in the fire station, we're actually getting 61.08 kBTUs, so really significant energy savings. So this is the BC engineering. So this basically the benchmark is what the building should be showing based on the construction codes when it was built. So this is actually what we're seeing. So these yellow lines.
Clarify Chris's current code.
Current
So we're built to today,
yeah.
which is ASHRAE 2010, Minnesota's version of ASHRAE 2010.
Yeah. So based on the current codes that was built today, the yellow line is what it should be producing for energy. So this, as you see, we're significantly below that. We actually have an index rating of 0.48, and actually on our B3 thing, it continues to send me a message thinking that's an error. Out of that. I think that, yeah.
Apparently.
Cool. You got questions? No?
Actually, a quick question, Chris. So, yeah, how much time per week, month, bi-monthly do you spend entering B3?
It's more than I need to. It's basically how we go after the fact. I go and collect the information from our energy bills. I would say it probably takes me, if I do it every 2 months, maybe 2 to 3 hours. But that's, again, I have to go through all of our bills and pull out all the specific things. We sort of put those in just big Excel bills, so it'd be like 225 separate pages. So there's a better system.
2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3 hours.
Long lunch.
Long lunch, and I'd say maybe an hour of that I'm also taking phone calls in my office while I'm doing that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a better system.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's pretty clear that Maplewood is hardly doing a thing.
Really?
No, you guys are doing a great job. And one quick plug, Excel Energy's Partner in Energy program. Applications are open now. I believe they're due October 14th. So go to their website, punch in Partners in Energy, and you'll find it there. So up next we have Alex from the Department of Commerce. He's going to talk about how you pay for all of this.
So again, my name is Alex Cicchini. I'm with the Department of Commerce, Division of Energy Resources. So I work in a team alongside Lindsay Wimmer and Peter Berger. Many of you may have worked with them in the past. And we combined manage the two programs, LEAP and GES. And it's not listed anywhere in the presentation except for on that first slide. LEAP is the Local Energy Efficiency Program. And talk about that. And GES is the Guaranteed Energy Savings Program, which is a performance contracting program, both of which are run at the Department of Commerce. So those are our beautiful smiling faces. We have information up on the web. I'm still working on getting LEAP stuff up on our website, but the link there is GES information. And I know that CERTS also has a bunch of good information as well for GES, and we'll work with them on getting more for LEAP. So before I talk about LEAP and GES as a program and how they can help you finance these energy projects, I want to talk real briefly about what type of drivers there are for energy projects like LEAP and GES. Obviously, the obvious one is you want to reduce energy use, but Beyond that, at an organizational citywide level, you might have other goals that relate, obviously, to city-owned buildings, reduction in greenhouse gases, using renewable energy or increasing your share of renewable energy, job creation, things like that. At a facility building level, you have goals like occupant comfort, health and safety, things that improve performance and worker satisfaction. You might have deferred maintenance, big capital equipment that needs to be fixed at some point and replaced. And then also on the resource side, obviously budget, that kind of ties back into energy use. But person power, capacity to get things done may be lacking right now, based on how much work you're doing, running around in your buildings, managing energy. So, next slide. So traditionally, the way that we think about doing energy savings, whether that's projects or individual things, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit already today. We want to benchmark our buildings, see where they're at, which ones are the power hogs and which ones aren't. If you can go drill down within the buildings, find areas that are obviously using areas or energy measures that are using more energy than others. Identify those worst performers, but then the traditional way to think about it is to implement those no-cost measures first. We talked about the operational guidelines, things like that. So that would be the first thing you do, the no-cost stuff. Then you go and you find funds with the city council or whoever to go and say, okay, we're going to do lighting, we're going to do all these other low-cost, high-return, short payback measures as well. And then, you're going to go up the ladder. There's more expensive things you can do. They're more challenging, or, you've got, like I said, deferred maintenance, things that you need to replace. You move up that ladder as funding becomes available, and you kind of get to it when you get to it. So that's the traditional way to think about it. Go to the next slide. And there was a study by the Berkeley National Laboratory that found that if you go this route, the one that we just talked about, you can only really accomplish about 3/4 of the potential energy conservation measures in your building. So you can get to a lot of them, if you do the low cost, no cost stuff first, then you go and find private financing to do the rest of it as you can get it. But there's going to be some that'll never get done. So there's a different way to do it. The next slide is to view a financing priority first, where you say, okay, we're going to look at everything that we can do, low cost, no cost, and some of the stuff that is a medium or higher cost stuff. We're going to try to bundle them all together to make a self-funding project. Basically, we're going to use that to go and get private financing. That might be 10, 15, 20 years. And we're going to pay for all that, and it's going to be revenue neutral. So we're going to pay it off over that term, and then after then, you see the energy savings. And then, you can use direct funding, whether that's appropriations from the city or your annual budget for repair or replacement on top of what you already did with the private financing. So this is a way to leverage more energy conservation measures, get more savings, all those goals that we talked about for basically the same amount of money. You can get almost 100% of what you want to get done. So with that in mind, I'll talk about the programs. I'm going to talk about them kind of back and forth a little bit, trying to compare the two. So LEAP, I'll talk about that one first. This is the program that I manage. This is a program to get energy studies done. Now, it's not a program to do a full design and implementation of an energy project. The goal by statute is to go get an energy audit done. And we've done that by getting pre-qualified firms. So these are engineering firms that are in a master contract with us. If you sign a joint powers agreement with the Department of Commerce, you have access to use them through an RFP to reach out to them. We also have standard documentation. So for that RFP, evaluating those firms, all the contracts that you would need throughout the process with all the different tasks and milestones that they would need kind of laid out, and they've already agreed to that in the master contract. And they also have standard pricing. So they've got committed pricing with maximums for the audit fees that they charge. The downside to LEAP, if you want to call it that, is that local unit government yourself would have to handle going and getting design and construction bids on your own before coming back either to the Department of Commerce or on your own to do financing. So those are kind of handled separately, along with the implementation is handled through your own standard procurement process. And then I mentioned financing. The Department of Commerce does have an agreement set up with St. Paul Port Authority for what's called the Energy Savings Partnership. It's a financing agreement. Basically, if you want access to a lease purchase financing, you can do that as long as you go through LEAP, or if we review an application that you went through with St. Paul Port. You can get financing through them without having done a LEAP for a study, but we just need to look through it from a technical perspective. So that's a way that you can get low-cost financing to do these projects.
Is this what Sean mentioned, your partnership?
The Energy Savings Partnership?
No.
No. So talking about LEAP, that was a good little overview. GEST, for those not aware, GEST is a means of doing energy savings performance contracting with ESCOs, the energy service companies. So similar to LEAP, we've got a master contract with pre-qualified ESCOs. There are 7, I think, in. And so those are the contractors that are in. We've got standard procurement documents, just like I mentioned with LEAP. The goal here for GEST is to do the whole process. So we do the intake with you alongside LEAP, and we look at the opportunity. Then we'll help you look at B3 data, other utility data. We'll look at your goals, issues, things like that. Same type of thing that we'll do with LEAP. And then the Department of Commerce through GEST helps from a technical side throughout. So from the investment grade audit phase, through the design and engineering, and through construction and implementation. So, and then even performance evaluation afterward. Performance contracts typically come with measurement and verification contracts, usually for the term of the guarantee, but they may be cut short. But so Commerce will be involved with that whole term. So digging a little bit deeper into this, I want to talk about just kind of the steps and the stages a little bit. So LEAP, I have outlined in a red box there the steps that are actually LEAP, but I wanted to include the rest of it to show that there are distinct stages along after you complete an investigation. So LEAP basically, we talk about project intake. That's actually done alongside GEST. So Pete, Lindsay, myself will work with you. If you're interested in doing an energy project, we'll actually look at your needs and goals and where you're at, what opportunities there are in your buildings to say, I think LEAP is a better fit, or we think GEST is a better fit. So that's kind of that informal steps up front to the screening. We'll, I said we'll look at your data, but then we'll say, are you viable for LEAP? Yes or no? Move forward with the JPA. So that's intake. Then we're actually kind of in the meat of the LEAP process, which is provider selection. So you do a site-specific RFP, do a walkthrough, they'll respond, and then you'll evaluate them with our help, and then you'll select the provider and go into the investigation phase, which includes 2 different parts. One is the preliminary investigation, which the contractor will say, these are the measures that we think we want to look at, more in depth. We think that there's something here. We don't think there's something here. And the other one, we'll kind of work through with you, and then you'll move on. They'll do a detailed investment grade audit, which will have a full workup of all the ECMs, what the cost savings are, what the estimated costs would be, and then you would sign off on that IGA when it's completed. LEAP is technically done at that point. So I mentioned before, real quick, design and construction would be handled through you. You have that investment grade audit to say, here are the things you should do. We'll come back in with you at design and construction bids to say, yeah, these bids look right, or what they were trying to say is what the LEAP is. And then we'll talk about financing, or whatever, if you want to go back to the energy savings partnership. The one last part at the very end, the project review and ongoing O&M, operations and maintenance, that would be where we would step back in formally to do a LEAP program review. We'd want a provider review. If there are any loans that we're involved with, we want to do loan tracking and a few other things. So that is technically part of LEAP at the end. But so again, it's kind of flipped. It's a little bit different in terms of how we're talking about it, but many of the same stages. The big difference, obviously, is that GEST is actually involved during project implementation. So project development is kind of the investment grade audit. That was where you talk about investigation on LEAP. Implementation and performance period, we are actively involved in GEST throughout the whole thing. So I'll just keep that short. So side-by-side comparison, now that we know, kind of how the 2 programs work. Eligibility, you guys you're all cities, so, the big difference there is that GEST works for state agencies and MINSCU, whereas LEAP is only available for cities, counties, school districts. Performance contracting versus design bid build. The biggest difference, people always ask us what's a good rule of thumb for what project sizes would be good for each. There is no hard line. There's a bunch of different goals and needs that you might have, but typically we say about up to a project size of up to about $350,000 would be good for LEAP. And then anything above that, we may be thinking that would be better for GEST. And it, again, totally depends. Another big difference is the financing term available. If you go through energy savings partnership, it can only be up to 15 years. So that kind of does limit what type of ECMs you can include. Some of the bigger capital things may not be able to be included there. Whereas GEST can can go up to 25, which also makes it a little bit more flexible for renewable and solar. That makes it a little bit easier. And the interest rates they're lower than market rates typically, but they're totally dependent on the project. So another one of the huge differences between LEAP and GUEST is that GUEST has that guarantee. So basically, in a performance contract, the ESCO will say you're going to save X amount of dollars a year, and if you don't save that much, we're going to write you a check between the difference in the financing costs and the guaranteed savings. So that's one of the big benefits. LEAP doesn't have that. LEAP is basically a vehicle to get a study done, and then from there you're kind of on your own to go and implement that project with a little bit more risk. But that being said, we will have, it's not set up yet, but we will have what's called a supplemental cash flow agreement. And that's basically when you go through the financing portion, you can sign up with us. We'll have a contract that says basically if you have a shortfall between what was predicted and what you actually got, we'll issue a loan to you in the difference. And basically that can have anywhere between a 5 and 15-year payback. So you do have to pay back. It'll be a very low, potentially 0% interest rate. The benefit there is that you're not saddled with a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 hit in a given year. You can just kind of smooth that out over the next number of years, whatever term you want. The interest rate, again, can exceed the project finance interest rate, but we're going to try to even keep it lower than that because it'll be a commerce run program. So it's not a guarantee, but it still helps manage risk a little bit. So that's it. Any questions?
Might be out of your range of purview, but MinCom has the energy platform reporting system where utilities have to report. Mm-hmm. How does that tie in with the P3?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. Is there anybody else here that can?
I think they're totally separate.
Is P3 just for cities, not the utilities? Is that it?
Correct.
And
yeah.
The energy platforms, I think, were the utility companies, 180. This is what I'm saying.
Correct. I don't think there's any overlap. Yeah, I think they're separate reporters have the distinction.
We're trying to involve, like with Excel Energy, getting them to participate in data in, also being able to work with them so that they can see kind of where their potential savings are, so that reps can work with different organizations that have the larger potential savings, like pull them into some of their programs so that they can see those savings, because the utilities have their goals on seeing those reductions, so helping them. These are totally optional if you don't have to. It is optional. There are programs. GUEST requires that you track your energy. GreenStep Cities has, you track your energy and what the organization is participating in. It is typically optional, but there are portions. State agencies are required. There's an executive order. State agencies have to have the data in. MINSC requires that all their campuses have their data in.
And we would require it as well.
Yeah. So depending on the program that you may choose to participate, there may be requirements. What's the cost of the license? For the public, it's free. The city, Maplewood or whatever said they didn't participate, it's the cost. Right. They wanted to bring in some they wanted to bring in those private businesses. Yeah. And so there was a fee associated with that. Okay, so it's free for public, yeah, but not. But so for the private, how much do they? It depends on how many buildings they're going to put in. Under 50 and 50 to, I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is. So if a private college wanted to participate, they'd have to count the number of buildings on campus. Yeah.
Alex, the cost for the audit is that roughly 10 cents, 12 cents per square foot?
So the different firms, they committed to maximum prices individually. So some of them are a little bit higher than others. They will bid on each project though, so they may give a fee that's lower than what their maximums are with their contract. Depending on the number of buildings, the size of the buildings, audits typically cost between $10,000 and $30,000. We might see that the average would be a little bit more based on the maximum that we have.
Is there any overlap between PB Big Guest in that if you start going down the PB road and maybe your project gets bigger than you expected it to be, or you want to bring renewable energy in, that it can stimulate?
Yep, so there are a few challenges. None of the firms that are in LEAP are. Yeah, so for those.
I didn't even catch that.
We kind of replaced it, very similar. So there are no overlapping firms between LEAP and GAS. So if, for example, we were already down the path of doing an investment grade audit through LEAP, it would be, we were trying to work through that. We're trying to head that off early on by doing a really rigorous screening phase that we get it right. We get the ones that are better fit for LEAP and GAS kind of in there. But in the event that that does happen, we're trying to work on that. Trying to develop a joint powers agreement that works for both LEAP and GAS, just one document. So if you're already in LEAP and you have a JPA, you don't have to cancel it and restart a new one. But typically, for example, if you went from LEAP to GAS, the firms, the ESCOs that are in GAS would probably want to do their own investment grade audit because they don't want to use somebody else's to then base that off of their guarantee that they're giving. So that would be kind of a challenge moving from, but a lot of the work that we've done up front, a lot of the work that you would have done for site-specific RFP, all the things that you'll have to detail out about your buildings and your situation will already be done. So that's a pretty smooth transition. You have all the documents ready, just need transferring over.
Are there any questions from Maplewood while we sort of cut off their question time a little bit?
Yeah, so with these events that you're putting on and the prizes, for example, the one that you have coming up with businesses, and it's going to be at a restaurant, is the restaurant sponsoring this prize, or?
Excel Energy through the MOU offered some financing for, especially that energy challenge, but now we're kind of on our own looking for donations and so forth. But they continue to help us with technical assistance and facilitation.
That 5-8 is the restaurant we're working with. They've been a great partner for many things. They provided us tons of gift cards. That was sort of, with the residential one, we handed out those at National Night Out to get people excited. So there's definitely been a partnership there.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our presenters. That was really great. It's clear that the momentum is really moving forward, I think, on energy, and a lot of things are happening. It can be really overwhelming. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to contact me. You can contact Philip through GreenStep Cities. You can find us on the website there, and we'll get you to the right person for your questions. The next workshop is covering city resilience, and that will be November 2nd. Week before the election, I'll breathe again. And I want to thank Johnson Controls again for sponsoring today's workshop. It's really helpful. It gets us bagels, it gets us food. It's really great. There's some handouts in the back there that have some useful information on them as well. And am I forgetting anything?
Don't think so.
If there are, no other questions, thank you all for coming. Thanks for everybody who tuned in via the webinar, and we'll see you in a month.
Congratulations on hired. Local government.